The expansion of drones has become so wide that today many people own one simply to satisfy their curiosity or record their own travels and adventures. Thanks to these people, various discoveries were made, and as you will see, some of these are entirely beyond belief. A drone finds a fugitive hidden in a cave. Our first case is definitely an unbelievable one. A drone recording a huge rocky mountain in the wilderness caught a glimpse of something suspicious. Once the drone operator decided to check it out, he took the first step, which eventually led to capturing a fugitive who had managed to evade the authorities in China for 17 years. This guy actually escaped prison back in 2002. His sentence was issued for trafficking, and he had quite some time to repent, but decided to do it on his own. After escaping the prison, this 63-year-old man found a cave where he spent all his time until he was caught. Since the escapee seems to have made a life for himself in this hidden cave, he left some trash and various items at the entrance of the shelter. This is what caught the drone operator's attention, and once he reported the weird case to the police, the fugitive was brought to justice. A topless surprise atop a building. This guy was operating a drone near a building, and as he was flying up, he caught quite an uninteresting bunch of frames focused only on people's homes. But once he finally reached the top of the building, there was a surprise waiting. Well, for some, this surprise may be a pleasant one, but for the topless woman that the drone discovered sunbathing atop this building, it probably wasn't so. Unexplainable shaking of the trees. Now, regardless of whether you believe that Bigfoot exists, we think this video is worth considering fairly seriously since it shows a discovery that's quite beyond belief. This drone was flying over an area heavily covered with trees when an unexplainable movement started happening. If it wasn't as specifically located in this small area of the woods, we could have thought that it may be the wind that's making us question reality. However, since there exists quite a pattern in which trees are being shaken vigorously, we must wonder what could be so strong as to make trees shake so easily. At some point, a tree even appears to have been pulled out from the ground and tossed around. Flying in a straight line, it must have hit the other trees. If you have any idea what this could have been, feel free to let us know, as we are all left wondering together. A man fishes hanging from a drone. The next video we bring you isn't unexplainable at all, but still, it is quite unbelievable. There are already quite a few sports that rely on drones. Still, these people from Australia had an entirely different approach regarding how one could use drones to make the usual activities more enjoyable. This time, it's all about fishing and finding the right spot in the middle of a lake. These people decided to strap a chair to a very powerful drone. After lifting this guy up, the drone carries him and his fishing rod to the middle of the lake. Once this suitable position is reached, the guy gets a chance to hang back, enjoy the beer that he strapped to his chair, and simply go at it. After some time spent in the air, it turns out that there could be some fish that would take the bait, even in these weird circumstances. Thermal drone used to capture snakes. We know that drones can be used in very different ways, but how cool is it that actual people rely on them to hunt for snakes at night? These drones are equipped with amazing cameras that are able to capture footage in the pitch-dark environment, and this footage is so detailed that one could even notice a snake on the ground. After locating the snake, this man proceeds to try and capture it. We see that the star of the show here, who happens to be a python, is ready to throw quite a fight, but the experienced man obviously knows what he is doing. After dazing the snake and making it bite what seems to be a bag, he manages to grab the snake's head, which enables him to pick it up and even show this trophy directly to the thermal camera flying right above his head. Once he has gotten a hold of the dangerous python, the hunt is essentially over. Robotic creatures walking through France. Let's talk about another quite surreal experience. Imagine having a normal day when you hear something going on in the streets below your building. As you poke your head through the window, there is quite a sight to see. Namely, giant robotic creatures are walking through your town. They're both approximately 45 feet or 15 meters high and have crazy features that include spraying water around. Well, as you can see, what we're talking about here isn't just an imaginary story. It actually happened in France in 2018 when such scenes occurred over 4 days. Of course, the giant spider and minotaur aren't of alien origin, but represent a performance backed up by a street theater that manufactured the beautiful figures. Interestingly enough, the two huge creatures even have names. The giant spider is called Ariane, and the minotaur is Asterion. It took a lot of coordination and a whole team of people to move these figures in such a complex way. This is especially fascinating considering that the spider had nearly 40 tons and the minotaur nearly 50 tons. An unexplainable figure walking through a desert. In a desert in Portugal, everything seems fine until we notice the eerie movement that's happening. Once we focus, we see that this something appears to have a human-like shape. As one would expect, after such an unbelievable discovery was made, people have guessed what this could have been. Is the origin of this creature extraterrestrial, or could it maybe be some overgrown primate? A drone discovers a UFO. At first, everything appears to be normal, but then he realizes there is a tiny smudge in the middle of the sky. After discovering that it wasn't something that had to do with the drone's camera, the guy zoomed in and discovered a rectangle-like object that seemed to be flying in a way that no known technology could mimic. Could this object be a UFO surveying our planet? It is quite possible, especially considering that after focusing even more, the guy discovered 2 more objects were moving around the bigger one. Mysterious circles on the ground. The next case takes us to Namibia, where these shapes, later known as fairy circles, were discovered from above. These random circles are 7 to 50 feet wide or 2 to 15 meters, and they usually don't appear alone, but instead in large groups. The edges of the circles that can even be seen from a drone are where grass has grown, and this mystery has puzzled scientists for quite some time. Besides being tough to determine how this much growth is possible in such a dry desert, it's also a question of why these formations appear and why there aren't any plants in the middle of these circles. Quite a strange thing, we must admit. Is it truly a natural phenomenon? People have wondered. This mystery is actually quite a recent one, and back in 2020, a study was conducted to determine what this could be. Their first conclusion was that even after the rare rain happens, some growth begins in the middle of these circles, but soon after dies out, while those on the edge of the circle remain. The answer that scientists came up with is that these circles of growth essentially pull all the water toward the edges. Since this is the easiest way for plants to keep soil moisture, all of it gets soaked up by those plants in the circle, and everything that's in between them dries out. The famous Noah's Ark. Regardless of how religious you are or what religion you come from, you have probably heard about Noah's Ark. Well, apparently, it was recently discovered by a drone. Do you know how sometimes we can't seem to recognize the shape of something that's right there in front of us? Well, this happened in this case as well. Even though people have been crossing over this mountain a lot, we couldn't see what it was before explorers took a drone, and aerial footage capturing this site was made. Some claim that the whole ark is placed deep below the ground, and this causes an interesting shape to form at the surface. Since there are those who aren't entirely convinced, technology will be used to record what's happening below this mountain. Dolphins and whales enjoying play together in the ocean. The animal kingdom is full of interesting and even weird friendships. This one among dolphins and whales was captured back in 2018 by a drone. Since both dolphins and grey whales were passing through the Pacific Ocean, they apparently stumbled upon each other. It is so awesome that even a drone happened to be around to capture this amazing footage. We clearly see that these two species are enjoying their time together. While the dolphins are circulating around them playfully, the whales are blowing water in the air. What a fun game this seems to be. A policing drone. If they can be used to make various discoveries, why not rely on them to catch criminals? This drone is relied on for exploration and going in to see what's happening inside suspicious or dangerous-looking houses. In this way, no lives are risked, and we still get a chance to see what's going on. After the explosion, the drone is used to go through the space room by room, and it actually finds a guy inside. A drone finds a missing person. It happened in England when a family took a sunny day as an opportunity to go for a walk, but they went into quite a boggy area. During their walk, they must have focused intensely on the topic of the conversation, since they didn't notice that one of the members of the family, a 75-year-old man, disappeared. Immediately, the police were contacted, and they formed a search party that was supported by a drone. This way, the whole area could be explored from the air. The search party that went on foot had no luck, since when looking from the surface, vision is blocked by plants that grow quite high. On the other hand, footage made from the sky certainly had no similar issues. Once the drone had found the man, we realized that he was indeed struggling to get out of the swamp that was pulling him in. Luckily, it didn't take long for the rescue party to reach the man and help him get out of this pinch. A train graveyard. There are indeed a lot of cool things that you can see when you take the bird's perspective. This time, we explore a graveyard of trains, almost like a scene from some kind of zombie-themed movie or show. This old-timer is stuck in the middle of the woods, where it plainly awaits the end of time. This railcar graveyard is quite huge, and as we can guess, it would take quite some time to explore all the different types of them. Some were used for passengers, for sleeping, for carrying heavy loads, and they even differ in how old they are, which is why we can see there are differences in the level of decay that these have undergone. A boat cut in half. Not many will be surprised when we note that huge boats rarely sink. This one, however, is an exception. After the disaster took place, we were left with this huge hunk of metal in the middle of the water. Since we don't have technology available that could just take the ship away, what we resorted to is cutting it into smaller pieces before it's taken out of the water. Unfortunately, the damage has definitely been done, and nothing can salvage the materials inside the ship. Just imagine the amount of cars and other pricey goods that such a huge boat has been carrying. Solely the financial loss that this disaster must have caused is a great one. Of course, there is also the question of pollution to the environment, which is luckily kept to a minimum. A huge fisherman gathering on ice. Fishing on ice is quite common in many places on Earth, but not many opportunities would be able to provide us with this type of scene. It seems as if the endless frozen surface is covered almost entirely by fishermen, and this event happens every year. If you're wondering why this happens, it is a way to support a good cause. Namely, about 10,000 fishermen gather to have a charity competition, and all the spots that you can see on the ice are essentially how these fishermen are trying to achieve the humane cause that gathered them here. Eagles trained to hunt down drones. Since drones don't only have to be used by good guys, there are some quite sketchy businesses out there being done and relying on often illegal drones. This is why Dutch police have decided to take an interesting approach to fighting these drones. Namely, eagles are being trained to chase and bring down these worrisome drones. What a great way to use a naturally well-honed hunting skill and keen sense to literally bring down criminals. Brunabuan. We move to Ireland with this next case, where an amazing discovery was made using a drone. It's safe to say that this is one of the most important archaeological findings in recent times. Even though we have known that this interesting place was around for quite some time, after taking a look from a drone, our understanding of it became even better. The drone footage shows that at this interesting spot, there's a circular formation that turns out to be a henge, which is 5,000 years old. What enabled this discovery was that, for a prolonged period, there happened to be no rain in this area. Since the Earth became dry after close to 40 days of no rainfall, the drone operator was able to distinguish the interesting shapes. This thing has been hiding in plain sight, and you won't be surprised that people couldn't just stumble upon it once you hear that it's about 500 feet or 150 meters wide. Berlitzer, a hospital that treated Hitler. Moving to Berlin, we bring you footage of an abandoned German hospital surrounded by a lot of mystery and hidden between the trees. Well, even from the first time our eyes fall on this huge institution, we can see that it has a lot of horror potential. While it definitely has something creepy about it today, this used to be quite a lively place, considering that it was constructed in 1898. If you haven't guessed it by now, it was a military hospital, and it even treated Adolf Hitler. Namely, the frightening historical figure visited the hospital close to the end of the First World War after his leg was wounded in the Battle of Somme. Nearly 100 years after it was made, the hospital lost its purpose and became abandoned. A bunch of prisoners burying dead bodies. Drones have made some quite disturbing discoveries all around the world. The next one we bring you doesn't fall behind at all, since it brings us footage of prisoners who were made to dig mass graves on a mysterious island. Just imagine using a drone to capture footage when you notice a bunch of people in hazmat suits digging out massive holes before placing wooden coffins inside them. We don't know about you, but we definitely got some goosebumps. Once people heard of this and saw the footage, a lot of theories started going around. Could this be a case of a cover-up? The public was provided with an explanation and even a location. This was recorded on Hart Island in New York, and the coffins that we have seen have quite a sad story. Namely, these were all the people that we were unable to identify, or those whose burial expenses couldn't be covered by what they owned. Gunung Padang. This discovery was made in Indonesia, and even though it seems like a hill covered with trees, it hides quite an interesting secret. It is actually an important archaeological site holding an ancient structure that has remains of what might have been a temple. It was estimated to be built somewhere between the 2nd and 5th century AD, but it could even be older. It isn't just the age of this place that's interesting, but it also may hold a piece of important history. Namely, it could be what remains after a king from ancient times attempted to create a palace overnight. It certainly took us quite a while before we discovered this site, considering that the first time we realized that we had something here, it happened in 1979. We have come to a close of this list showing drone discoveries beyond belief. We hope you have enjoyed it. If among these discoveries there were some you liked the most, feel free to let us know. Goodbye, and thank you for watching.